And hello, everybody. We are live. We should be live on both Twitch and on YouTube. I have Sid and Matt with me. That's your cue to say something.
Hi guys, glad to be here.
They can't see you yet, but they were waving, guys. I took the webcams off the starting screen because of the issue we were having last time with Matt, and also because it lets me navigate around Discord and post that I'm live to different locations.
You look cute sitting all low and small and bagged.
Yeah, right? Hey, I'm like just about Bilbo-sized, right?
Do hobbits have blue shiny ears?
You know, they do.
Sure, when they want to.
Yeah, certainly. See, they must have some sort of festival. They don't have beards. Well, I guess the Stoors sometimes had beards. So, hey, WT, how's it going? A shout out to my friend WT in the chat here, who just recently had a really, really bad fall and is laid up in bed right now.
Gravity.
Gravity is a harsh mistress, and he's got several broken bones and is just not having the greatest time. So.
I've been there.
Yeah. Oh, that is not what I wanted to do. Oh no, what did I do? I just accidentally signed out of YouTube. It's not what I was trying to do. Hello there, Chewy. How's it going? Let me just sign in so that I can have the chat room running properly. I haven't signed out of YouTube and... Oh my god, they gotta send me a pin? Hold on. Oh,
did either one of you guys see my play I posted?
I did, yes.
Afraid not.
I did see it. As a matter of fact, I had a whole conversation with the people on Quora about the text limit, and they haven't gotten back to me on the...
Okay, I only had to make a few hundred, character adjustments, but it's been edited several times. It's good. I think it's very good. I'm hoping that Sid can take a look at it.
Yeah, and I've just been overwhelmed with urgent stuff every day, but that started to change today, so I'll get there.
Okay.
If you can, just send me a link to it in email so I can be sure I'm on the right thing.
I was half expecting a message from John saying, oh, "Whoa, that was a big one."
It was. I was more concerned with the whole situation where you couldn't get the whole thing in there, and they were saying that you were only a little bit over the limit, and you were saying that you got the alert like about halfway through it.
I got it towards the end, but I was over
by...
Oh, okay. It seemed like it. I had to shorten it up. It was a long article. I mean, it wasn't an article. It was a fully fledged play.
You wrote a Shakespearean play based on Beorn and Luthien. I thought that was really cool, and it was good, by the way.
Thanks, John.
WT says, cheers, it's the most pain I've ever been in, so I'm good, I think. I feel you. And hello there, Chewy. I'm sorry, I was having issues with the YouTube chat, but I have it up now. Let me just go ahead and just promote us throughout the land of Discord, at least.
Matt, now that you're writing your own fiction and plays, you and I should talk about getting you on our archive of our own.
Okay. Let's do that when we have Let's do that when I have my discussion. But the play I put together had 5 original poems and songs in it, including the Pools of Oblivion, which you guys have already seen.
How many characters in it?
Oh, probably 20. It's in 5 acts and 18 scenes.
Oh, well, I once did something like that, but it was just 3 people, so I actually turned it into an audio play with 2 friends, and they did a great job. It was really fun.
I was going
but 18 would be hard to pull together. 18 people would be hard to pull together.
I was going to do an audio play, based on... It wasn't my own story. I was adapting it from a science fiction story that somebody else had written. and I said I would like to do an audio play version of your story, and they were all for it. But then it didn't work out for various business-related reasons, so I did not get to actually follow through with that.
Too bad.
The ideas I had for this was that we it's right now posted on Quora at Loremaster. I did put it up on our Loremaster website, lore-master.com. But we could perform it, because if we just simply highlight, and I send you the script, but if we highlight who's doing what, that way it would be ordered. We'd be able to talk in female tones or whatever, do our best. But we could actually perform it. It would be so good.
You know that I could do voices in it, but I can get you a Luthien. I mean, or why not ask Laurel?
That's what I was going to say. But anyway, we're past 7:30. Do we want to?
Well,
get rolling?
We got to give some people time to filter into the chat. And I'm saying hi to people. Actually, hello there. Sit-ins for Sithis is saying greetings from the Netherlands and greetings to you from various places in the United States. And Chewy, by the way, says it sounds like a cool play. Matt, if you will send me the link to it, I will put it in the YouTube chat so people can check it out.
Do you want me to send it right now?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
To where? To your text?
Whatever works for you.
Okay.
Send it to me whatever way you want at the same time, too.
Okay.
Sit-ins for Sithis is asking if you're a member. I don't see the badge on your name. I don't think you're actually a member. You're number 1 on my community leaderboard, which is a new feature. Hello there, Ingon Naplum. I hope I'm saying it right. If we're doing questions at all, you wanted about the Tolkien family, what are they up to? Just sitting back collecting checks. Well, what they're basically doing now is trying their best to protect the IP. Tolkien's great-grandson Royd is a producer and as well, and he's been in a few movies and such. And Simon is in charge of the whole estate and everything. They have licensed a few things, like there's going to be an opera based on the Lord of the Rings that they have licensed out. So, Duskuma hail Sithis, yes, of course. He serves Sithis in the void. I am actually a big fan of the Elder Scrolls, so I like to see that name in there. And hello there, Daniel Lynch. Good evening to you as well.
You'll be interested to know that this was done in a formal Shakespearean, and all of the quotes by characters in the chapter Beorn and Luthien were unaltered and inserted properly. So there was no, I didn't make up anything for the actual lines that were in there that Tolkien gave those characters.
I have the link, and I'm going to be posting it into the, hey Alice, I'm going to be posting it into the chat room right now. There it is on YouTube. I'm also going to put it on Twitch for anyone who wants to read Matt's Shakespearean play take on Beorn and Luthien. It is very good. I do recommend it as a read at some point. And that is not the link. Why did it not work properly? You guys can ignore that. That is not what I... Oh, I think my computer to phone thing isn't... No, it's working. Let me try that again. That's strange. Share via copy link. It says
if you liked Pools of Oblivion, you're gonna like
I'll just
you're gonna like the Stones of Sorrow, which is the song that Luthien sings to Mandos.
Oh, that'll be cool.
Ooh, that seems great. Wait a minute. Where is it that you sent? Why can't I see it? I think my oh, you sent it to the group text. I see. That's why. But I believe my my phone to computer link is not working properly. So let's see if I can get that working real quick, and then we'll start.
No, why don't you just move on, and I'll use my phone to get it to my computer and get it to you shortly.
Yeah. Okay. Hey there, Rico and Teppo and CW Train and everything is coming there. No, that's not the right. That's the link to the stream. I was looking for the link to. I know that link works and everything, but I'm looking for the link to Matt's Shakespearean play. Let me just go ahead and close my computer link thing and then reopen it. And that's not really working. Okay, guys. Well, Sid's gonna get it, and but let me do this. Sid's gonna get it, and I don't know why that's not working. That's gonna bother me. But anyway, guys, we're gonna come over to here, and now you can see them. And look at this. We kind of have a color thing going on there. Because you're looking due to the lighting and everything, Matt. You're very red, and then and then I have the blue from my headphones, and then Sid has the yellow curtain there, so it's like the primary colors here, right?
I think we should stick with the mood.
Actually, Matt, that glow is so similar to Saren in the Palantir as Denethor grabs the torch.
I just hate it when it works out this way. It just seems to just be planned. I don't know.
Well, who's to say that we didn't plan it in our subconscious minds, right?
Mm-hmm. True. Love that.
or maybe a subtler hand was at work.
Ah.
Yes.
Okay. I think, yeah, all right. I got it working now. I had to kill the process there, but I have the link now. All right, so this is the link. You guys can check this out, whenever you wish. And it's. Oh, I think I can fix that. It's a little too long. There we go, to post on YouTube. Okay, so there it is on YouTube, and I just posted it on Twitch as well. And like I said, you guys can check out that link at your leisure. That's Matt wrote the play based on Beorn and Luthien using sort of a Shakespearean idea there. Yes, there is. They did license an opera based on The Lord of the Rings. That is supposed to happen sometime soonish, officially licensed from the Tolkien estate. Anyway, guys, this is the way that it's going to work today. I'm going to go first, and then Sid, you are going to go second, and Matt, you will be bringing up the rear there. And so there we have it. So let me get the timer up here, and we're going to start with me. So let me get the... All right, so I'm going to give myself 2 minutes to sort of explain what we're doing here. So for our first half-hour segment, I wanted to talk about fan theories. And this is something that is big in any sort of fandom. No matter what it is, there are going to be theories. And there are a lot of fan theories out there, and some of them are very benign and harmless, and some of them are quite good and quite engaging. And then there are those that... The way that I put it is that if you told it to Gandalf, he would call you several mean names and then get very angry and then maybe apologize to you several hours later when he's calmed down and, he has not blown his gasket. So we're going to go around the room here with me and Matt and Sid, and we're each going to talk about the sort of fan theories that we dislike greatly and the sort of fan theories that we like, and maybe even that we have, which I know is going to bleed into Sid's section here. Anyway, I only used up a minute, so let me just stop that there, because that's enough preamble, really. Let's see. Why won't it? Oh, because I can click on it. All right, so we're going to set the timer for a half hour here. So just to start, the genesis of this idea is because I got a question through Quora, and it will be in the upcoming YouTube video that's coming out on Wednesday. Or if you're a member, you've already possibly seen it. And the title of the video is even, "This is my most hated fan theory." I've heard a lot of fan theories, and I'm not talking about ideas like why didn't they, take the eagles and fly them to Mordor. That's very tired as well, and we talked about that in an early episode where we talked about questions we don't want to answer anymore. But it was, is it possible that Gollum drowned Frodo's parents? And this is something that never fails to make me angry whenever I see it. I get upset, and I'll tell you right off the bat that it can't be true. and then I'm going to turn it over to Sid because Sid said he has something very amusing to start us off with here. But here's the reason that it can't be true. Obviously, Gandalf told us that Gollum got close to the Shire, and then he felt the pull to travel to the south to Mordor, and he wound up in Mordor. But what a lot of people don't realize is in that time that he was close to the Shire, that people may imagine that he could have maybe snuck in to the very eastern section, which is Buckland, where Frodo's parents lived, and maybe killed them. They died 30 years later. So it doesn't 29 years. It doesn't match up. Gollum was nowhere. He was actually with Shelob at Cirith Ungol in the same year that Frodo's parents died. And considering it took him a really long time to get to Mordor to begin with, there you have it. Sid, go ahead. I know you have something interesting to say here.
Actually, what you don't like about the theory is what I like.
Oh,
I
no.
love it. I love it that it can be so easily disproven.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but here's maybe you can ask. I have a question for you. Then maybe you can ask me this. It is easily disproven. Anybody who sees, hey Laurel, anybody? Oh, wait, Laurel. Let's have our toast now, since Laurel's here. Let's have our
Laurel,
toast.
our muse.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel. You're very sweet.
Okay. There we have it.
These were her gifts to us in celebration of a year of live streaming.
No, Teppo, it had to be at Samath Naur because it was the magic of the place to answer the question you just asked. Okay, so my question to you, Sid, and I'm very curious to hear this, because it's so easily disproven. It's in Appendix B what years Gollum was in what place, what years this one died or that one died. Why are we still hearing about it in the year 2025?
That I don't know, except there are an awful lot of fools in the world. Where would we be? But what I want to say is this: what I detest about this theory is that if true, it's meaningless and disconnected, and it's utterly untrue to the very nature of Gollum. Gollum gets to the Shire. What does he know? 2 words. Shire. He's there. Done. And Baggins has the ring. Mm-hmm. So there are a young Baggins couple floating on a river in a boat, and he swims over to them, and maybe he was even thinking of tipping it over, but then he says, "What's your name?" And they say, "Baggins." And he says, "Baggins? Would you know a Bilbo?" And they say, "Oh yes, our cousin over in the
West Farthing."
In the West Farthing, they got a place called Bag End. Yeah. Would you mind introducing me to him? And they pleasantly do. And of course, he has no reason to. They are in no way connected to the ring. Frodo isn't connected to the ring at that point.
Frodo wasn't.
So
Frodo's
Bill
not born yet.
Right, exactly. Gollum slides his way into Bag End, feels the presence of the ring, kills Bilbo, and takes the ring. Story over. Let's keep this real to the characters. If you're going to do fanfic, don't make up 2 things. 1, don't make up things that are utterly untrue to the nature of the character. Don't deny Gollum's obsession. And 2, don't make up things that are just utterly ridiculous and pointless. And, that's what I wanted to insert.
I want to hear Matt's thoughts on this particular thing before we talk about other theories as well. Hello there, David, and hey, Zelda man. You said something very similar to my thought, is that it doesn't make sense for Gollum to do this, even if, let's say, the timelines did match up. He knows what Bilbo looks like, and unless he's killing them specifically to eat them, he doesn't have a vengeance against the entire Baggins clan, and especially if he hasn't been there, he's not going to stir up a ruckus in the Shire before he's gotten to where he needs to get. He doesn't have the ring anymore. He can't hide in that way. He probably wouldn't have been out during the daytime to begin with. He hated the sun. Matt, do you have any thoughts on why it is that we're hearing this still in the year 2025?
I think that this kind of thing has always existed in humankind, in our psyche. In the most recent, last 10 or 15 years, I would call this, what this manifests in my mind to be the Game of Thrones effect, where everything's a plot and a scheme. And I mean, literally plots and schemes galore. There's just, if someone dies at a certain time and there's an evil person conflicted or whatever, like Gollum, and he hates, he hates Frodo and Bilbo, then their triangle must mean that if their parents died, that means it was done by the only known characters in the triad. I mean, it's that stupid. I mean, it's that connected. It's the same thing as saying, well, the Green River Killer, was killing people at the same time that Jason was a popular movie, and so therefore Jason's probably the Green River Killer, and that's as far as it goes, and it's just dumb. But people, believe this kind of stuff because they're partially superstitious, and they like the simple triads and other types of connections. But I got my own that are irritating. A couple of them, one of them you already know about, the other one maybe you don't know about, but that's what I think is going on there. There's no basis for it at all, like zero.
Yeah. Before we get into that, I wanted to comment, and also Sid has something to say. You brought up a few things. You mentioned Game of Thrones, which in my original answer to this on Quora, I said this is the kind of foolishness that George R.R. Martin would write, where there are no accidents. Like Frodo's parents died in a tragic accident, and yes, accidents do happen, and coincidences do happen, and they can happen in fiction as well. And another thing, and somebody in the chat, Zeldaman, was sort of alluding to this a little bit, is that he didn't get straight up to the borders of the Shire, but if he did, it seems likely to me that, especially without the ring to hide him, that the Dunedain, the rangers that were protecting the Shire, would have found him, or stopped him from entering the Shire at that point as a suspicious sort of guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to go to Sid.
Really briefly, because Matt gave me an idea. I'm going to push back before Game of Thrones, same idea. I think it begins with Star Wars. With the whole...
everything's connected to everything.
Your father.
Yeah.
No, in a specific way. It's like a familiar... They turn deeply meaningful ancient stories into family drama. He's my dad, my best friend did it, and it's a diminishment of our psyches, so we end up projecting our childhood trauma onto the characters, and our thinking is not elevated to the level of meaning that Tolkien has to offer.
And that's what I was meaning by when I said it's in a cycle, because it's part of our human psyche and our human nature. I mean, right in the most recent terms, as far as having an impact on the public in this kind of realm, it would be Martin's Game of Thrones. But you're right. I mean, it goes back in cycles. There's always some thing that's just got this just incessant, triangulation of some sort of evil plot and scheme, and it never ends. And but it was that too for then at that period of time. Sure.
Yeah. I mean,
to be clear.
Let me get a word in here, because you bring up Star Wars, and it's not just the familiar thing, but also, like Star Wars was something that told us nothing is coincidental and everything is connected to everything. And that sort of thing can be very fun, but it's also not the way that Tolkien wrote. He didn't operate in that sense. He wanted to create a world that felt real, because there was a lot of things going on. And yes, everything affected the whole, and everything's part of the music, but at the same time, there are things happening in one part of the world that have nothing to do with any other part of the world.
Except perhaps in very deep and meaningful ways.
On a philosophical way, absolutely. Yeah. Now, I wanted to... Sid, what is a fan theory? I used to give a fan theory that we like and one that we don't like. What is a fan theory that you don't like? And hey there, Matt.
Actually, go to Matt first. I really want to think about it.
Matt, you said you had one that irritates you, a fan theory.
I'm gonna go. I've got two.
Just give me one. just for time.
I'm going to go with the massive size of Encalagon because of
Oh
people's
yes,
absolute fixation with asteroid size dragons and all that whole thing. Like, I don't know, like a Japanese cartoon on crack. I just it really bothers me because it's like there's no. I can see where the confusion comes in, but when you look at all the evidence, and which I find is the most irritating aspect of this irritating aspect, is how many people, obviously we know this, how many people are not reading the Silmarillion. But they got a lot of theories about stuff, but they have never read the Silmarillion or the nature of Middle Earth or anything else, which is fine. But if you don't know, very much about that garden, don't start talking about the flowers in that garden. You don't know anything about that particular topic. And I see this massive asteroid-sized dragon, and I just go, oh my gosh, there's just how is that? I mean, he could have belly flopped on the whole army of of Valinor, and he could have killed him. I mean, his fire blast would have been the size of Nagasaki, when they're that big. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just dumb. It's not plausible. We also know that Calagon was a breeding dragon, and my third point is if he was a breeding dragon, I mean, how would that functionally work, with female dragons that are not that big? It wouldn't work. In fact, it'd be impossible. And so, it just seems vacant of any logic and deduction, and I just love logic and deduction, so it gets weird for me.
And I will point out that it is true that Ancalagon was the largest dragon, and he was probably twice the size of any other dragon that ever existed, at least. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, and I mean, like the size difference between the genders, I mean, you see it in crocodiles and alligators. The females are a lot smaller, but they're not 17 times smaller, they're like a third of the size, you know what I mean? I think I think that you're talking about like exaggerations, of the scale of Ancalagon. And you're right, if he really was the size of a country or a planet or an asteroid, he could have just flopped down and killed everybody.
Well, last thing, for bonus points, I'll point out that they say he was raised in. They came out on the last day of the War of Wrath from the dungeons below, And I'm sorry, where's that dragon being stored? If it's that big, I mean, it's bigger than the mountain. I mean, that's just unearthing like a mole pops out of his head and destroys all of Angband for the Valar, because he's got to come out of there. I mean, it's just there's like 16 or 17 or 20 absolute points that don't make that work, but people keep talking about it, and it actually kind of freaks me out. Like, seriously, what's going on here?
See, we each have okay, Sid, go ahead.
I have a reply directly on this, and when you're ready, I have one of my own.
Okay.
My reply directly on this is, now I am speaking as a lore seeker of dragons, and I can tell you honestly, reading across all literature and all legends, the smallest dragon I've ever encountered was about this big and invented cigarettes to kill humanity. Beautiful beautiful fantasy story.
I could beat that. The smallest dragon that I have encountered was about yay big, and I met him at a Renaissance fair. He wrapped himself around my pinky finger, and I petted him. And then this girl gave me a sticker that said that I was a dragon tamer.
Cool. On the other hand, the largest dragons in general mythology are the great dragons of China, actually, these here are described as the great dragons of North America. The entire range of the Smoky Mountains, the middle of the Appalachian Mountains, about 200 miles long, is one dragon, and each mountain is a spike on the dragon's body. And that it was the real belief of the Native Americans of the Smoky Mountains. So there's a huge range, but know them. Get to know these dragons, respect them, and don't just toss out wild theories that don't make any sense.
But what's your?
Would you like to?
Yes, I want to hear
favorite?
your unfavorite.
This one is more my unfavorite that comes to mind. It's not quite a theory, but it was a question that was so ridiculous I had to answer it with a hilarious reply. Anything along these any theory along these lines would be like this: why didn't Elrond join the Fellowship? my reply, why didn't Winston Churchill join the SAS Special Forces and go assassinate Hitler? It wasn't his job. He was busy running a country.
Yeah.
Again,
that's true.
So,
yeah.
Anything that makes somebody do something totally separate from their job and purpose or their nature.
Well, if you think about it, that's sort of the same thing as what bothers me with the Gollum thing and what you had brought to light, the fact that it's so far out of character for him to do something like that. And the fact that people always say, well, it is in his character, really tells you that they don't understand Gollum. Like he doesn't kill for fun. I think a lot of people, just because he's a bad person doesn't mean he kills for fun. He only kills either for food or to get his precious back. And that wouldn't have served either purpose. Now, we're about halfway through this, and this is the perfect time to sort of go to the more positive side and maybe talk about fan theories that we like. And I will give you a theory of my own, actually, that I think this is a good example. If you want to come up with fan theories, first off, I want to tell you, yes, do it. I'm not going to be the guy to tell you not to do this. I'm not going to say, well, that's not canon, because that's a very dubious concept at best. I'm not, I'm for fan fiction, or Tolkien was for fan fiction. He didn't know the term. He called it subcreation. But he wanted you to do this thing. He didn't finish his Legendarium, and that was partly because he got old and died, and partly because he never planned to finish all of it. Some of it was only going to be outlined, and other people would finish it, whether with a pen or a brush or a musical instrument, remained to be seen. So here's my thought, and it has to do with Radagast the Brown. Now, we're told through Tolkien's letters that the only one of the Istari, the wizards, that made it back to Valinor, that went home, was Gandalf. The other four did not. And we can easily know why Saruman did not. He was killed, and then his spirit did look to the west and was denied by a cold wind that scattered him. He's basically a ghost at this point, and he's stuck in Middle-earth until the end of the world. The blue wizards vanished. We don't even know where they are, and they are ripe for fan theories, especially since this is one of the instances where you can and perhaps should contradict Tolkien on the blue wizards, because he contradicted himself. He hadn't come up with a real story for them. He had a few different ideas. But Radagast, he didn't really do anything wrong. He didn't fall like Saruman did. And the blue wizards, it was an interesting thought that Tolkien had initially, that they did fall in their own way, not in the same way as Saruman. And then later he said, well, they did help out as well. And there are thoughts that both of those could be true at different points in time. But what did Radagast do that he never returned? My fan theory is that Radagast was never meant to return. They were all instilled, supposedly, with this thought that once they finished their task in Middle-earth, that they would be filled with the unquiet of Ulmo, that they would have the sea longing and want to sail to the west. And my thought is that Yavanna specifically took Radagast aside and said, I need you there. I need you to be my eyes and my ears and to look after my children. Now, Gandalf states in the Council of Elrond that he says that Radagast is a very worthy wizard and that he is a master of shape-changing, of different hues and shapes and colors. I think, here's my thought, that at some point when he vanishes, because they check, he's not in Rosgabel anymore, they don't know where he went, and he never showed up again. I think he took an animal form, and that he stayed in that animal form and became sort of Middle-earth's equivalent of like the spirit deer, this sort of mythical animal that watches over the forests. That's a theory that I happen to subscribe to, I happen to like. I'm not alone in it. A few people in Quora have said the same thing. And this is something that doesn't contradict Tolkien in any meaningful way and is true to the characters. And gentlemen, your thoughts and your theories as well.
May I jump in?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
First of all, I love your theory. I love your idea. I hadn't heard it before. I'm sorry, I didn't know that Tolkien said that Radagast didn't make it back. I'm kind of bummed. Therefore, I would go with this because it's a higher calling, and I love it. I want to turn to the Blue Wizards because there are some details here I've researched. There's a very interesting word that the way we use it today is totally different than the way Tolkien used the word. And the word is cult. But what most people don't know is that in the Catholic Church, there are cults of saints. Cult is not evil. Cult is just small and focused. A positive cult is a way of worshiping through a saint to God. Some people get confused and don't know there is a God and only worship the saint, but that's harmless because the saint passes it on to God. So Tolkien's two theories about the Blue Wizards, both the fallen one and the uplifted one, sync on the word cult. If you want to write fan fiction here, if you use the dark meaning of cult, it means like Saruman, they fell by taking power on for themselves. If you take the positive route, they became leaders of opposition religions inside the South and the East, calling people to worship Eru, possibly without even knowing the name, as Faramir did, in fact. And then in worshiping, refused to go to war. And Tolkien mentions if the Blue Wizards did remain true, even though Sauron had hundreds of thousands at his disposal, he would have had more if the Blue Wizards hadn't done a good job.
Zelda Man, thank you very much for the subscribe. Sorry, go ahead, Sid.
And so I just wanted, if you want to play with fanfic, what if one of them did start to fall in a bad way, caught himself, and fell in a good way?
I love it.
And therefore didn't fall at all.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Let me interject here real quick.
Certainly, Matt.
Let me give a final sentence.
Okay.
If you want to write good fanfic or good, useful theories, think along these lines of the kind of complexities that Tolkien intentionally left open, and read his instructions on fairy stories about how to write good, sub-creative material, your own imagination, or these days fanfic. He tells us how to do it. I'm done.
Matt, go ahead.
Intercession from saints and things like that isn't worship. It's when people do that, they're trying to pray and communicate with a dead ancestor kind of thing. It's not like worship. It's misconstrued that way.
But there are men in Middle Earth who worship the Valar.
Yeah, I understand that, but and that was the other part of my comment, which is Sid is correct. I mean, we the old term for cult was more like maybe the modern term for what a guild would be like. Mm-hmm. It was a guild basically at the time, up until maybe 100 years ago. Cult was just a small group like a guild, and there's really no difference between the two. It wasn't didn't have to make anything. You could also believe something. A guild isn't just a makers group or a union of some kind. Usually a small collected group. But anyway,
I want to hear a theory that you like.
No, I wanted to say real quick about Sid's that I just thought that's a very interesting take, and I agree with it, and but I'll leave it there. So I want me to move on. I would say the one I really like is similar to what we've talked about in the past, which is there's something going on with Goldberry.
Oh, yeah.
And there's something big going on with her, and the fan theory that I like, I don't think is so much theory as opposed to it's got more weight. As I've said in the past, it's got more weight to it than other places. It has better air down the passage than other passageways. When we're talking about shape changing, which we're going to get to a little bit later on the show, which is going to be cool. The ways she's described in Lord of the Rings, and the appendices, and in Adventures of Tom Bombadil, which obviously is canon. And in the letters, she's a shape changer. She's from the river. The Withywindle on all the maps, including the ones that Tolkien wrote himself, begins at Tom's house. That's the wellhead, or what you might call the spring head of the river, that then flows from Tom Bombadil's house through the old forest in that direction, not the other way. So it's coming out of the ground at his place. And she's the daughter of the river, of the Withywindle. So, but the passages talk about her, living in the water and being in the water. And Tom has discussed this, in the writings. So I believe that there's more of a, there's evidence that she's some kind of an amphibian, half human. She looks to be human, according to the hobbits. But to be a shape changer means that she's got something to her that's in the Maya category, which would be similar to Luthien and Beorn. There's something there. There's no other beings of the first race or the followers or dwarves that has any shape changing going on without having a Maya component to the lineage. I mean, there is no other one that allows people to shape change like that. Sauron, it has to be a Maya involved to do all this. So,
did you read
my favorite theory?
Did you read the article that I wrote about Goldberry not very long ago?
I haven't seen that yet.
Okay, I'll have to send it to you because you're going into a very similar territory.
Well,
send it to me too.
Beautiful minds think alike, John.
I shall, yeah.
And again, real quick, let me just finish.
You go ahead, finish. I'm going to grab it. You have 2 minutes, by the way.
Sure. My last little comment here is when fan theories. What I like about this, the positive note about this, is when fan theories actually have got a basis of reality to them. They've actually thought about it. There seems to be a consensus. It may not be conclusive, but it's going down that road, and there's no other competing theory that has any weight to them. So this is the only one that has any weight to it, and it matches up at the same time with all the other known examples of shape changers having a Maya background to them. I think this is a fair one. This is a good one, and I think it's a great one, and it makes the most sense and leaves the most things in harmony, and doesn't compete with anything that Tolkien wrote. So I think that's a thumbs up on that one.
I just sent the article to the group chat. Go ahead, Sid.
I just want to, if you want to write fan fiction or a theory of Goldberry, I'm going to give you guys a gateway that I found and will use, and it can be used by everyone in a different way.
Wait, hold on. I have to tell you what Laurel said. You guys are all crushing on Goldberry. Look,
totally true.
Even Frodo did. Go ahead, Sid. And hey, Moogle.
Tom says, "Naught that walks on two legs can predict or can master the weather, as Goldberry is standing outside in her rainstorm to do her laundry."
Her washing day.
So, her washing day. And it's very clear that Goldberry doesn't go on two legs. She just appears to.
Sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't, is the way that I see it.
I
final thought on Goldberry, by the way, and you're just coming into something, like I said, it's in my article, is that the most definitive word that we ever got from Tolkien on Goldberry is that she represents the change of seasons.
Well, she does, but that's not the end of her.
It's not the end, but it's... Oh, we're out of time there.
Okay,
but final thoughts. Go ahead. Final thought, Matt.
Thank you. I want to point out something that, since it's a good segue, the passage reads of what Sid's talking about is that just before that, a couple of paragraphs before that, it was a sunny day, and yet she's outside in a deluge. It's described as being a deluge coming down, and Tom goes outside. It was nice out. It's a beautiful day. He's
dodging raindrops.
And he's dry. And his boots, his pants, and his coats they're dry, and it's just the strangest thing that this is raining on a sunny day, because she's got absolute total control of what you might call the element of water, I suppose. But oh yeah, it's very clear that she's a big deal, and so I'm glad we're in harmony on that.
Final thoughts, Sid?
Actually, the last thing I said, the key to me, if you want to go really broadly, one, does your theory, however you're going to use it, uplift people? And in particular, does it uplift you? And one thing you're going to discover when we come in next month is that we can all disagree. There are rules for making a valid subcreation, and they can all contradict. And if all goes well, next month, the three of us will have one subject and three different views, all of which are valid. And I'm going to encourage every listener not just to choose one of ours, but to make up one of your own. And the key question is, Tolkien said, every reader finishes the book or novel or story he is reading with his own, to fulfill his own imagination and guide his own life. So please create things that fulfill your imagination and guide your life, and don't go off on random murder sprees just because you think your favorite character would do that.
Yeah. I don't really have any final thoughts other than what I have already said. I did want to highlight a few things from chat. So David here had a fan theory. He said that he thinks that Goldberry is Elmara. And I said, well, Elmara, I was typing in the chat here. I said, Elmara is married to Eonwa. And he says, well, Tom is Eonwa. I don't agree, but I really appreciate the thought. The reason that I don't think it can be true is because Bombadil has been in Middle-earth specifically pretty much the whole time since the beginning of the creation, whereas Eonwa has been to Middle-earth, but he's mostly, in the Undying Lands, walking around there. But I appreciate the thoughts here. I just want to highlight a few other things. Teppo's fan theory is that Sauron took the rings back from the Nazgul as insurance. If one of them was somehow destroyed, he could use the ring to make a new one by corrupting one of the Easterlings, which I think is almost true and is plausible because he doesn't have the One Ring, so he can't make new Nazgul, but he's planning on getting the One Ring back, so that could have been in his thoughts, certainly. And Zelda Man he's been running a D&D campaign, Dungeons and Dragons campaign, based on the Lord of the Rings, and he said the Dark Lord came back, and one of the Blue Wizards came back to help, and the Dark Lord had a daughter who betrayed the father and is helping the group and such, which certainly makes sense for a role-playing game. That's sort of like in the realm of like Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, sort of where it's really wild and ambitious and not really in continuity with everything else, but it makes sense for a game. Sid, I saw your finger up if you had something to say about one of those.
Just a quick note. The Mouth of Sauron has lived longer than a natural life and has become dark and evil and utterly Sauron's mouth, his slave, a part of him. I suspect that the Mouth of Sauron had the ring that Sauron got from Thorin's father.
Yeah.
Thrain, yeah. So he's using a dwarven ring to corrupt another human, another mortal.
I personally think he wouldn't have needed something like that to corrupt that guy. I think that guy was already there, But I like the thought that he might have been given it, perhaps not. You're eating on camera.
Sorry.
Perhaps not as a corrupting influence or a mark of power, but just as a token of his esteem, I think. Anyway, Sid, your section is next. And now we had talked earlier about how your section and my section are kind of intertwined, and now we've realized that Matt's is intertwined as well. So this is going to be a really fun episode here. But
you guys have been looking at your Palantir too long.
Well, sometimes I just like to take a day for myself and ponder my orb. But okay.
Don't you guys realize I got that Palantir on all the time?
Okay, we need to make a T-shirt of Matt holding a palantir and saying, I keep that thing on me. Okay, 2 minutes to do your intro. Go ahead, Sid.
Okay. I'm going to, as John knows, I'm going to do an intro and also weave a bit of a tale along exactly the lines that we are talking about, because this is something closed my windows. Give me a moment, everybody.
Do you want me to pause the timer?
No, I'll talk a bit. Yeah, pause the timer if you would.
Okay. All right, I've paused it. If you've lost your
I've got the right. Okay, I'm in the right dock. I just need to. Here we go. So, can you all hear me? I'm looking at the screen.
Yes.
Right?
No, of course we can hear you. We can also see you. Yeah. Although you're looking very white right now.
Bright screen in front of me.
Yeah, exactly. It happens to me too whenever I bring up something bright.
So here we roll. 2 minutes of intro and then start the regular timer.
Okay.
But I'm going to give a long tail here and then leave it to you guys, including all of you guys in listening to us on Twitch and
YouTube,
because I want you to finish this tale in the way that Tolkien would want you to finish this tale. I'll explain that as I go. This is called The Victory of Denethor. How do mortals who die fight deathless enemies such as Sauron? By dying well. In The Lord of the Rings, we find a Celtic triptych of older generation mortal leaders who die well as heroes, so that their lineage may be uplifted and renewed. In each case, Gandalf played a key role as the steward of the free peoples and all that is good in Middle-earth. Frodo, Master of Bag End, says, I will save the Shire. I saved the Shire, but not for me. Elrond heals him after the deathly Morgul blade, but the healing leaves him transparent for those who can see, says Gandalf. Gandalf heals Frodo again after the One Ring is destroyed, but he has become so uplifted, so full of mercy and pity, that Frodo cannot find peace in the Shire or anywhere in Middle-earth. As an elf friend, he can only heal among the immortals of Aman who bless the Undying Lands with healing peace. He leaves the Shire, elevating lowly gardener Sam Gamgee to Master of Bag End, 7 times Mayor of the Shire, and founder of a new elven-blessed lineage of the Fourth Age, the Fairbairns, the Undertowers of the Tower Hills. Theoden, king of Rohan, is bewitched and mind-poisoned to doddering senility by the wiles of Saruman and by Wormtongue, whom Saruman has corrupted. He is healed and uplifted by Gandalf the White, that he may die a heroic death in battle. In doing so, he makes room for the new third line of kings of Rohan, with Éomer as a young, victorious king with a renewed and strengthened oath of fellowship with Gondor to launch the Fourth Age. Denethor, steward of Gondor.
Sid, you're way over 2 minutes.
I know. No, I told you I'm going to go 8 or 10 minutes.
But we talked about this, that you'd take 2 minutes for an intro, stop, and then I'd start the 30 minutes.
I just told you, start the 30 minutes, go.
You didn't.
But I'm going to finish my intro.
Okay, I was having the 2-minute timer go.
Right.
So
when you said it's 2 minutes, I said, the intro is done. This is now, start the timer, and this is the piece I'm delivering.
I didn't hear any of that. Okay.
Okay, well, I said it all before and during. No problem.
I've started the timer.
Great. Thank you. Sorry about the confusion, everybody out there.
Yeah, I just wanted a clear delineation between intro and main body.
We got it. Thank you. Denethor, steward of Gondor, is the most troubling case. Most see his madness and self-immolation as a failure, and probably a sign of accursed insanity. But reading closely, I hold a different view. I intend to show why I see Denethor as fighting Sauron to the bitter end, as outwitting Sauron, and as victorious up to the point where his mind is broken by Sauron. And even in that broken moment of death, with Gandalf's rightful aid, he does not kill Faramir, and thus escapes the fate of a destroyed soul. Great evil, such as the ring or Sauron, can break the mind of a mortal. But when that is done by force, the Fey, the soul, is not damned. Just as Frodo was redeemed by doing his best until his mind was overpowered and broken through the ring, I hold that Denethor was redeemed by doing his best to the very end until his mind was broken by Sauron through the Palantir, when it lit up red with flame and Denethor's mind crumbled and he grabbed a torch to end his life. And up until that moment, Denethor defended Gondor. He even used the Palantir against Sauron very well. And with faulty intention, he nonetheless fulfilled the Germanic and Celtic model of the aging leader, to die well and leave room for the next generation to carry on the lineage and purpose of the role of the Steward of Gondor, was Faramir's steward and uplifted to Prince of Ithilien. The death of Denethor seems utterly tragic to most readers. Burning oneself on a pyre in a fit of madness is certainly not a good way to go. But I believe that a close reading of the tale of Denethor's madness reveals an alternate interpretation. Denethor victorious, and even with his mind broken, his Fea, his soul, surviving the madness of his death. I see this through close textual reading. The conclusions are my own. I don't seek to convince you, and this is the essence of what we've been talking about good theories. I believe Tolkien left this open to interpretation. I only hold that this uplifting view is legitimate in Tolkien's theology of eucatastrophe, of heroic uplifting victory at the end of an age, teaching us something of the divine path of salvation in history. I believe that Denethor, in all that he did and in dying the way he did, made a crucial contribution to the downfall of the ancient enemy of Gondor and the rising of the rightful Númenorian kingdom of united Gondor and Arnor under Aragorn II Elessar. The king returned after almost 1,000 years since the last king of Gondor fell. And I believe there are strong evidence that Denethor's soul, his Fea, survived the madness of his death. Evidence. Denethor never stopped fighting Sauron. In the chapter Minas Tirith, Denethor, I know already sufficient of these days from my own counsel against the menace of the East. In context, he shows he's still fighting Sauron. He is using the Palantir well, and his mind is whole, not broken, and he's not daunted by Sauron. Via Beorn, and the Lord Denethor is unlike other men. He sees far. Some say that he sits alone in his high chamber in the tower at night. He bends his thoughts this way and that. He can read somewhat the future, and he will at times search even the mind of the enemy, wrestling with him. Yes, Denethor fights Sauron to the bitter end. Denethor kept Sauron's focus on Minas Tirith as Frodo made his way into Mordor, just as Gandalf wanted everyone to do. Denethor's death happens when Frodo is stabbed by Shelob. Sauron knows there is a disturbance at the Tower of Cirith Ungol, but pays it little attention because Denethor's resistance calls Sauron's attention to Minas Tirith and away from Frodo and the Ring. The madness of Denethor and illness of Faramir make the temporary passage of power to Gandalf and Prince Imrahil essential. When Pippin comes to Gandalf and Gandalf learns he must save Faramir, even though at high cost, he says to Imrahil, "Take command in the Lord's absence." Thus, through Gandalf to Imrahil, the role of steward is suspended before it is dishonored at Denethor's death. When Gandalf arrives, it is like the incoming of a white light to a dark place. He disarms Denethor with a wave of his hand, saving Beorn. Gandalf shows his strength by leaping onto the unlit pyre and lifting oil-soaked Faramir with ease, preventing Denethor from killing his son and heir to the stewardship of Gondor. In all of this, Denethor shows only despair. Sauron broke him by convincing him that he had already failed. But Gandalf saves his soul by preventing him from doing harm to anyone but himself, and by reminding him that he has gone beyond what a steward may do. Authority is not given you, Steward of Gondor, to order the hour of your death, and only the heathen kings under the domination of the dark power did thus, slaying themselves in pride and despair, murdering their kin to ease their own death. So we see the error Denethor is making, but how it is not complete because Faramir is saved. Then the Palantir glowed red. That's Sauron's presence right there then. Sauron broke Denethor's mind with an image that actually foretold Gondor's victory, the Blackfeet sailing from Umbar, but seemed to augur final defeat. Thus Denethor's mind was broken only by believing the deceit that all was lost. He fell into error and despair at doom, and thence to madness. His mind broke, but he never fell. In fact, in the last debate, Gandalf honors Denethor in his opening remarks by quoting Denethor. You may triumph on the fields of the Pelennor, but against the power that has arisen there is no victory. He honors Denethor's true insight, even as he counsels an approach opposite Denethor's, not retreat, but a faint sort of the real secret mission of Frodo, to destroy the ring and Sauron forever. Thus the salvation of Denethor's soul. We know from Tolkien's letters that Frodo's mind was broken by the ring, and that was why he claimed it as his own, yet his soul was not damaged beyond repair when his mind was broken. Tolkien discusses this in his letters. He makes it clear that being overwhelmed by a greater power of mind is not a failure of soul, but only an injury to it. Might Denethor's mind also be healed and his soul saved? By the logic of the Celtic triptych, I believe it is so. Frodo's mind was poisoned by the ring deeply for a year and overcome at the end, but his soul was free. Aging Theoden's mind was broken to doddering senility by Saruman and Wormtongue. Gandalf healed his mind and he grew strong to victory in battle, taking down the standard of the Haradrim to launch an assault with hope of victory of the Rohirrim, then swiftly fell in battle. In these two stories, no one questioned if a person with a recently broken mind was doomed to be a fallen soul. Therefore, by the logic of the Celtic triptych, each tale informs the meaning of the others. Thus, though the fall of Denethor was most tragic, I believe his Fëa, like Frodo's and Theoden's, had a chance for purification in the eyes of our Creator. Done, and take it over, guys. Your thoughts, your co-creation, all the way out to the fans, to listeners.
Before I even get into my thoughts, I want to just pass along something from the chat here that Teppo said. Giving into evil is reflecting a lot of original sin concepts from Christianity. It is giving in to inherent greed from Morgoth's corruption. Now, you talked a lot about whether or not his soul had fallen, and I think what Tolkien would say, and what I would also agree with here, is that's not really for us to decide or to even know. That's between him and Iluvatar. And we had a discussion here not super long ago where we sort of agreed that there doesn't really seem to be an easy path to damnation in the world of the Legendarium, that you have to be like really, really evil to get to the point where there's no hope for your soul. The Witch King is like an example where Gandalf, who has been beyond the circles of the world and returned to the world, said to go into the oblivion that awaits you. And I don't think that Denethor, who I think he lost his mind. I think he did a few really bad things. I think trying to kill Faramir was a really, really rough thing that paints him as being very flawed in my esteem. But at the same time, I don't think he would have ever been even close to that level. I think, to give in to crushing, oppressive evil and madness is more human than anything.
Quick thought. I agree, but until 2 months ago, I had always read, and I think most people read, that Denethor fell and was destroyed. And it was 2 months ago that I said, let me take a look at that. I'm feeling something different now. And my point is, that's what I hope all of us will do and by the way, you're completely on target with whether a soul is saved is entirely in a final encounter between Eru and
I mean, I mean,
and the
honestly,
soul. Even in the case of Gollum.
yeah, yeah. I
That's
mean,
in Tolkien's letters.
I mean, yeah, and I was going to bring up Gollum because I think like Denethor, there's no doubt to me that he's good to go. You know what I mean? I don't think that there's anybody who hasn't done something bad in their life, and whether it's in real life or in fictional worlds like Middle Earth. Like even Gandalf, sometimes he lost his temper and said regrettable things. Gollum is more on the precipice of for 600 years, he was such a foul being. And then, just like one good thing right at the end. And that would be a fun discussion to, okay, how would Iluvatar view that? And I know that Tolkien absolutely refused to answer that question. But we need to hand it over to Matt because I want to hear his thoughts, especially considering his background here.
Well, I'm curious, Sid. I just want to ask you what exactly would you like me to? I mean, I want to turn this back to you for 1 second. What exactly would you like me to address?
Well, first of all, if you have any close reading of your own or reflection on the passages I cited and how they look to you, that would be great. And if you have any just feelings of, do you agree that it looks really bad forget the whole soul-saving thing. It looks really bad for Denethor how he went and what he tried to do.
So I do have a middle ground to take, only because thanks. I do have a middle ground between you guys in one sense, not because I'm trying to find one, but because I think you're both right. But like so many things, there's a different aspect at the same coin. I think what John's saying is true. This is going to be up to Eru. But we do have a lot of examples that show us what John is also saying is also true. There's several things that are true, which is you got to go out of your way to be evil and make deliberate bad choices for evil to probably not have any hope of any what you might call final mercy. The Witch King went out of his way for a long time, but here's the rub. The rub is that can we make a general statement that we think that from the other examples someone may probably get mercy or not? Yes, I think we can do that. That's what you might call in the business for doing that kind of thing. When people watch us and we say this person had some extenuating circumstances for leniency and mercy. And that leads me to my main point. And the main one is having anything to do directly with Morgoth and Sauron. If you've made a mistake to mess around with a Palantir and you come in contact with the amplified vision and soulless contact with Sauron through his own Palantir, you're toast. All right. So the plea is, if there is to be a plea, is I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, the characters that run into Sauron and Morgoth are outside of Huron. Of course, he was cursed and his family was cursed. There's extenuating circumstances, and Tolkien makes account for this.
Can I just agree with you real quick?
Sure.
And Huron made a specific comment that that Morgoth couldn't do anything to his soul specifically.
He did, and that's what you call carrying the big ones, if you understand my meaning.
Absolutely. He had the biggest of them all. Dude needed a wheelbarrow. I mean,
but it's a segue into what Sid's talking about here, and that is the big ones that he's carrying in his shorts, but also the ones he's carrying in his heart.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that know exactly where he is, who the enemy is, where the enemy is, and what he's going to do if he is able to take it to the enemy. Even if he perishes, he's going to take it all the way down into the ground, and with his last dying breath, he's going to say probably a couple foul things to the person who put them in the ground because he's completely committed. Now, the last thing I want to say related to all that, which is the biggest conundrum for Gollum, which is one of my favorite aspects of Gollum, is that he literally had a portion of Sauron's magical power and Fëa wrapped around his finger for, I think it's 520 years. Now, I don't think very many characters, and no characters, had that much what you might call contact. Certainly Denethor did not have that much contact. Nobody had that much contact with an evil being like Sauron, but it wasn't just contact with what he made. It was a contact of his finger, his own Fëa, being surrounded by a ring with Sauron's Fëa and magical power that was designed for not only knowing where the ring generally was in a direction, which is my theory, but also that it was about soul control and mind control. And when you're talking about 2 or 3 years, that's tough. I mean, like Frodo, right? When you're talking about Gollum having it and using
Frodo,
it constantly,
it was closer to 20, but yeah.
Well, just a couple years compared to.
Well, I mean, you're right.
Gollum.
You're right, though. Even Maethros was only, up on that mountain for 30 years, and that's about what Hurin Thalion was stuck in the chair for 30 years. But Tolkien does make the point that Gollum was nasty before that.
No, and I'm not discounting any of that. I mean, that's his own thing he's got to discuss. At that point, Mandos is gonna, I don't know, maybe the St. Peter of this particular legendarium.
He kind of is, yeah.
Yeah, he is. There's a conversation. He maybe gives Gollum a chance, and he says, well, you did kill. But he would probably be accurate to say, I was taken over by the power of the ring wanting to get me to save itself from the depths. And it's apparent to me now that everything has been explained to me, now that I've been waiting for my judgment day, that the ring was trying to get its way into the hands of the most manipulatable person, and that was me. And Amandos,
and also he was the stronger of the two. That's the other important thing to mention.
Exactly, the stronger and also the most possibly emotionally manipulable. And I think that Mandos probably would think about that for 2 or 3 seconds and go, that's not a bad point. And so the rest of what he turns into, because of the transformation of his soul in this twisted form that he's been surrounded by the ring in a lot of ways, becomes a mitigating factor in all of this judgment. A very great cause for mercy, in my opinion. And so I will leave it there by saying that it's fair for us to be able to say that with other examples in the Legendarium that this might be a case where there is some mitigating circumstances, some serious ones, for mercy.
Okay, I have 2 thoughts. One is having to do with what you said, and the other is going to let me kick it back to Sid, who's had his finger up. One is that there's an interesting point about the nature of death and what you talked about with Hurin Thalion and Morgoth, because his whole point was, you can do whatever you want to me in this world, but once I'm beyond it, you can't do anything to me. You can't really damage my soul in any meaningful way. And the nature of death, and I had recently had the opportunity and the necessity of studying the debate of Finrod and Adonal, and it was a really interesting thing because the wise women of the House of Haelith have a lot of history of sort of being wrong on a lot of things. And Adonal had this thought that it was some sort of original sin that caused man to be mortal and to die, and that life in its purest form is meant to be immortal, and that death is only a consequence of having done something wrong. And Finrod's like, hey, the elves have done bad things too, and we're still immortal. Yeah. But he said something really interesting that I thought was a beautiful sort of take on the way that elves view death. And that he said, you think of death as a sundering of the two kinds. I think of it as a unification, because we're immortal, but we're eventually going to die with the world. We're tied to the world. Eventually the world's going to go, we're going to go, and then we're all going to be together again. And I think that this is another, and I wish I had studied this before we had that episode about this idea. another point in the case of a near universal salvation in Tolkien's mind. Now, the other thought, because I wanted to kick this back to Sid, and the one thing that I did want to take you to task for in your monologue there was I agree largely with the fact that Denethor is essentially a good person and that he did fight the good fight as well as he could with his limited resources and his limited mind and body. But I don't think it lets him off the hook of having dishonored the office of steward just because Gandalf had handed over control of the city to Imrahil in that moment. I think that's a leap.
I hear you. And he's responsible for that choice, but at least he was saved from murdering his own son and destroying the lineage. And that was Gandalf's intervention.
That's hugely important, yes.
But I want to come back. I want to come back to Matt's point first, because we have Tolkien's view on this. It's one of the strongest letters.
Sid,
yeah?
Could you talk for maybe a minute straight?
Sure.
I have to go. I have to run to the bathroom real quick. I'll be right back.
Do whatever you need to do.
Okay,
He's letting me talk. Hey, everybody. What Matt said.
Gone, so what are we going to do now?
I can eat my dinner. So, Matt, Tolkien's point about Gollum is this. The saddest moment for Tolkien in The Lord of the Rings is that when Gollum is pawing towards Frodo to wake him to repent, and Sam wakes up irritable and drives him away, because Tolkien knew that repentance would have been real. So I think another case to make for Gollum is, hey, I had a moment of utterly genuine repentance in my heart. And according to everything you'll read in the Bible, that counts for a heck of a lot. And on to what... Actually, John, give me a 10-second review of your key point, because I've slightly lost in my mind. You want to get it right.
I think it's a little bit of a leap to say that he never dishonored the office of steward, because I think the intention of trying to murder his son does dishonor it to a certain extent, as well as the greed inherent of saying that he was going to refuse Aragorn and that his wish was to continue to rule as steward and to leave the rule of the city to a son that was not a wizard's pupil. He really didn't want to give up his own power, and it was not his to keep, as Gandalf pointed out. So saying also, I think, letting him off the hook in that one minor way by saying, well, Gandalf gave control of the city to Imrahil before he completely went bonkers. I think that's like, he still was the steward, even if he wasn't, there.
I agree. It's a very technical point.
By the way, one of the persons in the chat, because I left and you continued, they said you're the steward of the council. And Laurel, I'm gonna get to your point at the end of the segment.
And John,
I have a comment about this.
Something for John. I return authority to you that you have returned.
I accept.
But John, there was another point you made, and I agree with you on those points. There was another one you made just before. Do you remember what it was?
Was it about death and the circle, Adenel and Finrod and all that, or?
Yeah.
Wait.
Oh, Tolkien was very clear that the only soul in all of time and history that he was sure fell forever was Morgoth. Mm-hmm. Everyone else, even Sauron, was potentially redeemable. It was up to Eru. Eru had decided about Morgoth, and when the new song of the Iron would be resung. Oh, I remember the other point too. Only Morgoth would not be there. But the other, for sure. The other thing is this, that elves on mortality, the view that you presented is very different from Tolkien's own view. Elves envy the gift of mortality to humans. They are sundered from being in Eru's actual presence. They can feel it, but they can't go be with him in Eru's heaven until the end of time. Whereas in their view, a human soul dies, gets to go back to Eru immediately.
I think I would say
please
that.
Let me finish.
I just want to jump in 1 second.
No, I want to finish my thought.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
The thing that Morgoth did was lie to humanity before we even awakened. We lay sleeping in our bodies, and he told us that death was the end, and we lost track of the fact that when we die, the norm is to return to Eru for a mortal.
Okay, yeah.
So death was never in Tolkien's view, was death the result of sin.
I know, that's why I said that she's wrong. The wise women of the House of Haleth have a history of being wrong about a lot of things. But what I wanted to say, and it would have been better if I would have been able to say it when you were talking about the elves before you went on to the men, is that the elvish view in general of mortality is yes, they sort of wish they could leave because they eventually become so old that they tire of the world. But there's very few that are as wise as Finrod. And I think Finrod is seeing things on a completely different level to the majority of elves. And I don't know if I think you must have. I forget which book it's in. I want to say Morgoth's Ring. I think you've read it. But the debate is really interesting because she's so far off base on the way things work. And Finrod is so kind in his saying, he doesn't just say, it's wrong. He says, that's interesting. I don't really see it that way. And he brings her around very slowly over the course of a very long conversation to the idea that death is a good thing because it's eventually going to bring them all together in the second music.
Mm-hmm.
May we all speak to each other and everyone the way Finrod speaks.
Absolutely. I mean, if you ever want to see, and he called it a debate, and I think people have a view of a debate as being adversarial, but Tolkien obviously didn't feel that way whenever he used the term debate, whether it was in his own private notes or stories that didn't go published until he died, or even in The Lord of the Rings, the final debate. Yeah, that's the way we should debate. And look at the way that Finrod and Adanal spoke to each other, you know. And by the way, Adanal, really interesting name, means daughter of man.
Another good example is how Beorn and Finrod had their discussion with one another about what to do about his oath and all that. Hey, I want to point out something I think is really cool about a couple of things. One is that this issue is one of the big flaws and failures of not very many, but some of the Jackson films. So that might be of interest to the audience.
Oh, but I was waiting till the end, but there are a few comments related to that in the chat that I'm going to go over at the end. But yes, you're right.
Okay, so, but John, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but there's a tact on it that just is just canards a little bit different for me, if that makes sense. Denethor and Celebrimbor have some real common problems. They're both dealing with Sauron. So whatever happens with Denethor in his throne, having contact with a Palantir, is already skewed. It's skewed to the degree that even by the end, Sauron, being the evil piece of what he is going to twist the situation in order to kill Denethor at the end by giving him a vision of hopelessness that that turns into him trying to kill his own son. All of this is not normal. All of this is related to Sauron's twist and grab of his soul. And so my last hold on.
Finish.
My last comment though is about this issue with what could have made this scene in the movie so great is if they would have taken 15 to 20 seconds to show Denethor putting a cover over the top of a palantir and walking out of a side anteroom into the main throne room, and then greeting Pippin and Gandalf as they came in, because then the tie would be seen that he is also under the influence of what we've already seen through the Palantir with Sauron, that this is why Denethor is acting this way. And without that connectivity, Denethor comes off as just psycho crazy for no reason.
Just to reply to what you said real quick, because we're on final thoughts here. I never said that there was anything normal about it, or that Denethor was like beyond redemption or anything like that. I'm just saying that we can't really let him off the hook that much. And I'm saying that, he did some bad things, and to say, well, it doesn't really count because he wasn't in charge of the city at that moment. I mean, you could be a politician and then give up politics and then still do bad things. I want to highlight some of the things from chat. First off, Laurel says, Denethor lost hope. He had done all he could and all he knew to do to defy the enemy. Attempting to kill Faramir wasn't because he had turned to evil, but because he was trying to save his son. The way that he saw things, Sauron would soon come and go all Vlad the Impaler on him and his family to destroy the last stewards of Gondor. And I largely agree, although I think that one thread that we all seem to have forgotten, actually, and it just came to me now, is he kind of thought Faramir was already dead. And I don't think he was really listening to Pippin when Pippin kept saying, hey, he's alive, he's alive. He might have thought that his little hobbit friend had lost his mind. Also, Sid, you were mentioning how the only soul in the Legendarium that is beyond hope is Morgoth, but the chat has told us that there is another, and it is specifically the movie version of Denethor.
Well,
to me, the movies aren't part of the
no, they're making a joke. Here is what Teppo said. Elrond refused mercy to movie Denethor for the vile act he committed on a poor cherry tomato.
Well, I'll give you a serious answer to that. I think that Sauron is the other candidate, because his opportunity to come make good with any act of contrition, if you want to call it that, in any sincere way, was when he was approached by Eowyn, and Sauron basically told him to pound sand by not having anything more to do with him. That was a great opportunity, and one given to the by the Valar, by the way, to deliver that message through Eowyn, saying, I'm not going to judge you. I don't have authority to do that, but you got to come back with me. And he's like, no, I'm not going anywhere with you, because now's my chance to be the Dark Lord. I think that was his last chance.
I agree that it was a chance, but it is certainly not his final chance. I don't think that there is a final chance until the end of the world. I put Sauron into the same category as Feanor, who always has the chance to, and as Saruman as well, who always has the choice and the chance of redemption, but is perhaps too pig-headed and very arrogant to actually go for it. Sid, final thoughts?
I want to see that. I want to see that conversation between Mandos and Sauron. It's not going to go good.
I agree with what Matt said, though. One is Tolkien has a direct note on that. He says, nobody knows whether Sauron's repentance was feigned and faked, or whether Sauron's repentance was to Eowyn. He wouldn't go back, but he did come to repent. Might have been real, but not deep enough. And Tolkien tells us nobody knows.
Not even him.
The thing that I think most comes closest to sealing Sauron's fate is when he brought down Numenor, his use of human sacrifice that gave the sacrifices, the killing of people, gave tremendous evil power simultaneously to himself and Morgoth. He was re-empowering Morgoth and then being empowered by Morgoth. So at that time, he was at one in mind and dark heart with Morgoth. and it's hard to imagine a way back from that.
I agree that was where he fully embraced evil. He even stopped referring to himself in his own mind as Tar Myron, and that, when he during the fall of Numenor. My thing is, like, he does. I'm saying I'm kind of like what Tolkien said about the orcs. Will they redeem themselves? And he says, I can't imagine that they will, but I hope so. And as for Sauron, he has until the end of the world to repent. Do I think he's going to? No. Would I hope that he would? Yes.
That's like saying, you're going to be judged on the fact that you were brought into this world as an anglerfish, and you're being judged on how you look. The orcs were entrapped into this existence, and that is a sucky way to be judged in the end.
Yeah, let's not get into the orc discussion now. Actually,
no, but I do want to say that that statement by Tolkien has to do with do a close reading of Leaf by Nigel and what purgatory looks like to Tolkien, even for himself, because it's a clear metaphor for that. Very good people may have a long, hard time in purgatory, in Tolkien's view. But if the longer purgatory might last, the more hope there is that we'll get purged.
Okay, so now we're going to go to Matt. And Matt, I have 2 minutes on the timer for you to do your intro, so go on ahead.
Okay, this is going to be fun. Oh my gosh.
I happen to know that this is indeed going to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea. I have no idea what it's about. I'm going to have lots of fun.
Okay, well, there's a couple of harmonies we're going to bring together in this segment, having to do with Beorn.
Great.
Beorn was discussed, obviously, in The Hobbit. There's some references about his size that we can extrapolate, and as many of you know, that's something in my wheelhouse. And
Matt and his yardstick.
Yeah, there's a yardstick. There's several of them involving Beorn because he was huge. But we also are going to be talking about the nature of Beorn in general. This is going to be a deep dive segment. Focusing also not only just his size, because that's what I like, but we're also going to be talking about what is he, his origin, what kind of being could possibly be a composite of how he becomes who he is, which you guys will also like. So we're going to cover Beorn in general, and in my view, this is going to end with some awesome takeaways that are canon based, and we're going to put them together logically. And they're going to show that he was a big deal, and he was physically a very big deal. And so that's where we are with the intro.
Okay. All right, let me set us up for 3 minutes. And I knew that Sid was going to be excited, and I knew this was going to be a fun topic. Sid, why don't you start? Go ahead.
In my creation of the Celtic triptych of Frodo, Theoden, Saruman, I wrote an additional list of minor characters who fit the same pattern, and Beorn is one of them. So Beorn is a powerful, solo, independent lord of his lands, no mention of children, who simply who steadfastly, from the time Gandalf and Thorin and company come through, and perhaps even before, protects a very dangerous part of the world with the evil of Mirkwood on one side and the evil of the orcs of the Misty Mountains on the other, and helps keep that passage across that is so very dangerous. So, and we know he stays that way solidly from then all the way, he and his descendants do. So he too created a lineage and passed away, and the lineage was a pure and positive lineage. The Beornings, his children, we assume, all shape changers like him, elevated to a lasting status and value for the good when he passed away. So it's another version of the same triptych we were talking about. And as for the other parts, I just want to hear more and respond to what you have to say.
So Matt, why don't we put our nerd brains together for a moment here and combine our powers? You get your tape measure, and I'll get my dictionary, and we'll talk about the nature of Beorn. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
And I think I'd like to start with. I'd like to start with how he can be a shape changer, and the lineage issues. I want to start with that, and then towards the last 10 minutes, I'd like to reserve that time for discussing what I believe is clear evidence of how big he was, both in human form and in bear form.
So go
I'm
ahead.
going to have to take it.
Wait, one second.
Hold on.
Bio break.
No, Sid has to take a
bio
break.
break. Are we back? Yeah, but you keep
Go ahead.
talking loud. I'll hear you.
Go ahead.
Okay, but my only thing is this isn't just designed to talk about size. By the way, John and Sid.
Oh, I know. I'm just joking.
It's also, I know, but it's actually more interesting than that. That is when he entered into the Battle of Five Armies. The description of him entering into that and the artist renditions that I've seen out there, which are pretty good about that scene, is he was a huge problem on the battlefield, and so there's a size element to the lore that's really cool here, and that's why I'm going after it.
You know, it's interesting that you mention that, because in the Battle of the Five Armies, he's practically the Sixth Army.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And today we're gonna find out why.
Okay. Okay, so I know you want to talk about size. Let me jump in with linguistics really quick here. So Beorn is a really interesting word, because it means bear, but it also means man. And when Gandalf talked about Beorn specifically, he said that he wasn't sure whether Beorn was a man who could take the shape of a bear, or a bear that could take the shape of a man. Now, Tolkien in his letters clarified that he was a man, but it's so interesting that he blurs the lines that much that even Gandalf might, ponder a little bit on this, and that his name means both, but also the literal transliteration from Beorn to bear is honey eater. And if you know your classic literature, and I already alluded to this in the chat, that there is another literary character that has a name that means eater of honey, and also man and bear, and that is Beowulf. And while the character that follows Beowulf's story the closest is Turin Turambar, the character that is most like him, and I think is the Middle-earth stand-in for the character of Beowulf, and would maybe become the inspiration of that legend within Middle-earth, is Beorn.
Maybe what we'll do.
And by the way, Daniel said.
Start with his nature.
Daniel said, Sid, the absent steward, right there. But yes, let's talk about the nature. Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good. Nature. Now, I'm going to throw out a couple of hypotheses real quick, and then I'm going to stop. And since that's kind of my section, I'm going to throw out what I think makes the most sense. Okay, as I said earlier about Goldberry, there are no examples in the Legendarium of anybody, any character able to shape change unless they've got some kind of genetic conduit to the Maya. There isn't any other way of shape changing like this. As you just pointed out, you helped me make my point, which is Gandalf saying you don't know whether he's a bear that becomes a man or a man that becomes a bear. That's how intertwined he is with his powers, his so-called enchantment of himself. He's under no enchantment but his own, as it was said in the book and in the film, which was one of my favorite parts of the movie. But it's so true, so intertwined. So my theory is that somehow something early on there was a Maya being that shape changed, reverse of what Melian did, which was to make herself human. But this Maya turned into a bear and fell in love with a female bear in bear form. And earlier you said that this is a possibility that Radagast he's a Maya who took a form as a deer. Now,
you know, it's interesting. You know, I didn't say specifically deer, but that's how I see it, though.
No, I know, but I'm
it's just interesting that you went in the same direction. I just find that amazing.
Well, right, because if there's pathways to it, if Maya or the way that you can shape change, and we know that Luthien could shape change, even though she was an elf and half Maya, basically, and we know that a Maya came into the world as Melian and took the form of a female and married Thingol and was able to reproduce and make Melian. We have all the pathways we need for this kind of thing, and so I'm wondering, in reverse of kind of how Melian was and how Goldberry was, and your theory about a Maya in the form of Radagast being able to take a form of an animal. You know, these relationships, of course, these are all morphing relationships, that's fine. But how this could actually be would be the only way it could be, under the way that we have understood all these passages and these other examples in the Legendarium. And so it's a very interesting generation and origin of a being, of a race that can do this kind of thing. And it doesn't happen by Eru coming out of the clouds with his hand and messing around. It happens in these panentheistic natural ways, the natural ways of the world, in which Maya and Valar, but the Ainur, are able to come in and take a shape change, and then they have relations for the best intentions, let's say, with these beings, and that's how this race gets born. Now, obviously, Tolkien isn't going to talk about it. This isn't that kind of thing, but he's got breadcrumbs all over the place for this kind of stuff. And all people that you and I, you know, we can do is connect 3 or 4 of these breadcrumbs and put them together for people, because in the absence of any other theory to the contrary, this is all there really is that leads us down this pathway, down this passage. And so there's my statement. I'm curious about what you guys think about how Beorn is a shape changer.
Sid, why don't you start here? Oh, Sid, we're not hearing you. Something you did when you walked away, I guess. Oh, you're muted on Discord.
Oh, you must have muted to walk away.
Yeah. All you have to do is click that little microphone button and you're good to go.
Are we good?
Yes, yeah. Now I can hear you. Go ahead, Sid.
Apologies. After 9 in the evening, I don't do tech. Anyway, a reply to John and then a reply to Matt. John, your linguistic research is excellent, and it does something very interesting. Obviously, I think most people probably know, but Tolkien did translate Beowulf, and the more I look into it, the more Beowulf is infused in many, many parts of The Lord of the Rings. But the kind of linguistic thing you found is a type of magic. I don't mean in Tolkien, but in the general rules of magic, which Tolkien almost never used. There is a magic called sympathetic magic, in which the sound of the word of a name has magical power. There was once a novel where a world needed to magically manufacture airplanes, and they took a plane tree in the desert and created a plane factory. And that particular use of man, bear, honey eater in Beowulf and Beorn is that type of magic, which in general Tolkien does not use very much. He plays with words, but not in that way. So I found that fascinating. On to what Matt was...
I just want to say, I think it's specifically because it was The Hobbit, and he was being very whimsical and sort of throwing in a lot of things that he thought would entertain his children, but also things that he was going to be entertained by himself, which is why we
Yeah.
see that little bit of linguistic magic, which is, as you said, is uncommon for Tolkien.
Well, when he's entertaining himself and making it consistent entertainment, that's when lore is developed.
Absolutely.
Because he does it in many other ways by this same Maya conduit. But go ahead, Sid, sorry.
But before that, there's also a lot of pain in this. Tolkien was not able to publish his translation of Beowulf because it was too creative for the scholarship of his time. He was doing a kind of scholarship that did not arise anywhere else in literary or philosophical circles until the 1980s with postmodern feminist scholarship, where your own personal view was a legitimate part of the scholarship. And he had to get personal with Beowulf because it meant so much to him, and therefore he was trapped. I guess I am acting ruling steward again. Welcome back, John.
It was slightly out of my reach, but I was grabbing the Beowulf that Laurel actually got for me, and I mean, and this is the, I think it's the best version, and it is true. He was being creative in some ways, and I think translations should be creative. And who knew Old English text better than J.R.R. Tolkien?
I think it was a kind of solace to him to bring Beowulf into Beorn and play with it with his children. Kind of like, well, that's all I can do with it, but at least I can do this.
Even earlier than that, in 1917, he was writing a sort of a mirror image of the tale of Beowulf with the children of Húrin. So, it's always been on his mind.
Yeah. Now, coming back to what Matt was saying, I like the basic idea, but there's something about Maya who are not Istar, and not the case of Melian, because she became an elf and married right away and bore children, which had a lasting effect. But Maya, good Maya in general, can at any moment take any form they want to take. If they habitually take a form, they're likely to do it again. But for example, the Valar have humaniform or elfiform appearances to be with the elves, but they take totally different and unknown physical forms that we don't even know about, because no mortal or elf has ever seen them, all the time in Valinor. And any Maya who's not an Istar or Melian can do this. So what if it was the other way around? What if a Maya at times took the form of a bear, and at times took the form of a human?
Yep.
And could have been male or female. We don't know the original from which Beorn himself is a descendant. Who knows how many ages ago, perhaps. Could it have been a Maya who took the form of a male bear and a male human, then fell in love with a human female? Or the gender is not likely to switch. Tolkien did feel that the Maiar had intrinsic gender, or it might have been a female. We don't know, but the being certainly could have taken both human and bear form, been a honey eater and also a human. And there's an interesting possibility there. What if this one was a male progenitor?
Well, hold on. There's an answer for that.
Well, let me finish the thought.
Okay.
Suppose it was a male progenitor who had lives as a bear and lives in a human role, but finally fell in love with the human woman. That would allow Maya blood to enter the human stream without the problem that Melian had of being a Maya who bore a child and therefore couldn't change again, but would remain eternally alive. This Maya, once done, he could just go off and leave, but the human who bore the child would have the gift of the shape-changing father and yet being female human, no damage or alteration occurs. Hence, maybe she gave birth to Beorn, or she gave birth to an ancestor of Beorn, and the whole family continued on as honey-eating human beings that could change into bears, or honey-eating bears that could change into human beings, or whatever.
And
I think that's a possibility.
As you mentioned the honey, I do want to bring something in from the chat room here, because somebody here has a very different theory. What if, and this is just like a theory that a person named Teppo in the chat has, what if Beorn was not born into this ability, although I think he was, but this is a theory, but gained the ability via magic, and that it is connected to the honey that he eats?
Or maybe being stung by a Maya bee.
Oh, that's funny. Did you know that there was a series of children's books about a bumblebee named Maya?
No.
I love it.
Yeah.
But no, that's an okay theory. But the thing is that in the Tolkien's Legendarium, there's to do this kind of thing is an Ainur thing, and that's where it's coming from. And I think that Sid is really close, but I think that in this particular case, there has to be an actual bear involved, because the other examples have an actual, like Luthien is an elf. There was an elf involved. She wasn't Maya. She was elven. So she's what you might call her of the lesser form, or of the lesser developed form in this hierarchy that Tolkien's got, because if he's able to be a bear and Gandalf can't tell whether he's a man or a bear, that means that there was a bear involved, and the Maya who changed form was in bear form and fell in love with a bear.
Okay.
Male or female.
So I got to go into my theory here. I haven't gotten to
let
speak
me just
Go
say,
ahead.
That works with a male Maya who at times was a bear and at times a human, then mated with a bear. So the bear could be a human because that aspect of the Maya came into the child.
Okay, so my thought is somewhat
All yours.
It's between the two ideas here. I don't think that Beorn is descended from any of the Ainur, and I don't think that this was a learned ability. I think this was an ability that was either inherited or gifted. I believe, and this comes from more of a linguistic delving, that it is a blessing. It is a blessing specifically given by one of the Valar. And the reason, like I said, bears, huge in linguistics, because there's so many different words for bears. There is a really important map, and it's one of the, you can't find it in the Hobbit right now, but if you ever manage to track down the history of the Hobbit that has some of his earliest maps that him and Christopher drew together, and this is the very first time that he was drawing a map that was connected to the Hobbit. The very first map he made, the compass that he has going toward, where it says north, he drew a little diagram of a constellation, which he called Valakirka, which translates to sickle of the Valar, sickle of the powers. And we know this as the Big Dipper. But it has a lot of other names in Tolkien's legendariums, and one of them is the Bear. And we know that the stars specifically are associated with Varda, and that she created many of the stars to give the elves who were going to awaken in the darkness of Middle-earth before the rising of the sun something to see and to navigate by. But also, one of the stars in the Big Dipper, the Valakirka, Durin's Bane, the Wain, the Bear, is called Ursa Major, which means Big Bear. So I would say that the connection here is specifically to Varda. The bear is important in every culture in Middle-earth, whether they call it the Bear or the Wain or whatever. Durin's Crown, the Valakirka, and the fact that Beorn was introduced in The Hobbit, and the very first map that he made to go with The Hobbit had the Valakirka as part of the compass, and a character who shifts into a bear That's my take on it.
Okay, I have a comment real quick.
Can I support that really quickly?
All right,
ahead.
Sid, go ahead.
In Roman culture, the constellation that we call
The Big Dipper.
The Big Dipper is called Ursa Major.
Yeah.
That is the actual Latin name of it.
Big Bear.
And it is the Valkyrka, and it points to the North Star Polaris.
Which is why
So
he
it
had
is
it as
the guide.
north on the
Exactly. It's the guide to the North Star. So all this fits together.
And he only becomes a bear at night when the stars are out. I think the Valkyrka is what turns him into a bear.
I don't think it turns him into a bear. I think he turns into a bear at his own will. But
Possibly he could only do it at night because I like this. It came from the power of Ursa Major.
Which is inevitably the power of Varda, Queen of the...
Okay, so I have a competing
theory. There may be a Maya
that.
there too. Go ahead.
All right, I have a competing theory to that. If it's not something that's what we have pattern of, which is a Maya origin, and it's a Vala gifted enchantment, my theory is similar to John's, but it's not Varda, although she might be part of it. But I think it's Yavanna, because as it says in the chapter of Aule and Yavanna, she pleads with Manwë that there needs to be protectors of Middle-earth, and one of them is the Ents. Now, if we're taking that tact on this, that means that Yavanna was the gifter of the shape-changing thing, so that Beorn, the Beornings, could be protectors of the forests, and that means then that Goldberry could have also been one of the protectors of the fish in the lakes. So you've got this gifting of an ability from the only person in the Silmarillion who says, hey, I want to be able to make creatures that can, in my vision of the Andalindala, that actually protected the woods and things like she was talking about.
I love this because
it's actually
the Ents for the animals and the skin changer, the Ents for the trees and the skin changers for the animals.
Yes, and that fits more in line with how Goldberry is the protector of the inner waterways for the benefit of Ase. That these pleadings were heard by her, and this is Yavanna's doing. She's doing this, and it's maybe accentuated or brought about more easily. I would say more easily, because when the Battle of the Five Armies happened, he was dropped into the battle as a man. That was the middle of the day. So he changed, even in the book version, he changed into bear form from man form in the middle of the day. Although I think that there's some idea that there's a Varda and Yavanna connection, but this is Yavanna. This smells like Yavanna's footprints all over this.
I want to pass it to Sid, but let me just piggyback on that. I think they both can be true. We have a conversation between Yavanna and Manwë, and Manwë, relaying the thoughts of Iluvatar, and that there will be, various spirits that will come into the Kelvar and the Ulvar, meaning the flora and the fauna. So, now, I still think there is room for Varda to be very interested here, because Varda, like I said, that's the stars, and then you're also mentioning Ulmo and everything. I think they all had their own little version of this conversation in some way or another. And I think, I do see the connection of Yavanna to Beorn, but I also... I still think Varda, specifically for him and his type, might make more sense. Sid is absolutely going insane, so let's hand it over to him.
I think we can nail this down even farther. In the Silmarillion, the chapter that explains the creation of the Ents is called of Yavanna.
Of Aule and Yavanna.
Of Manwë.
It's Avala and Yavanna.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking
but the
about.
Conversation in it
is between Manwë.
Between Manwë and Yavanna. Let's take Matt, you began by looking for an archetypal pathway for these things to happen, we found a new archetypal pathway. We
agree with
know that that Manwë and Yavanna got together, had a conversation, found the idea of talking trees really weird, found the idea of talking eagles really weird, and then remembered they'd actually sung those in the Song of the Ainur and forgotten that they had. And that is how we ended up with both the great eagles, which are pure Maya spirit, and later the speaking eagles of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings.
Speaking birds in general, too.
Yeah, but specifically as the eagles of Manwë. At the same time, we got the trees as the protectors of the forests from, in particular, Alei's dwarves' need for wood, and all the evils that would come.
And Manwë's response to her at the very end of that chapter was, "That is strange."
Still, they'll need wood.
Yes, but let's go.
He said it was strange. It's a strange thought. Her thought about protecting.
Yeah, that was Manwë's response, and Alei's response.
So it's correct.
Was they're still going to need wood,
and it does show why.
Let me finish and say my core idea, please. Okay.
Well, let me just respond to Matt.
No, please. No, it was my turn.
Yeah, but Matt was speaking, and I just want to reply to him real quick. It's not that big of a deal. It also goes into why dwarves generally don't like forests. Go ahead, Sid.
Okay, I'm going to suggest. Well, we know that every little piece of the Silmarillion is typal of things that went on that are not remembered in history. So if Yavanna and Manwë can get together and remember things out of the song and create new and marvelous sentient creations from doing that, nothing stops Yavanna from doing that with Varda, and hence the Ursa Major, the Great Bear. And nothing stops Yavanna from doing that with either Olmu or Weenen, Weenen being the Maya of the waters of all the lands, which then could give birth to Goldberry and also give Elrond's power of raising the waters in protection of Rivendell. I always thought that Weenen was involved in that. What he was doing was calling on Weenen.
Well, it sounds like this group is tracking towards a conclusion on Varda and Yavanna enchantments that are similar to.
I prefer the word blessing.
I'll go with blessing, but I think go beyond it. Let's pair up any two Vala. They could have done this.
Yeah,
sure.
And Yavanna definitely had multiple reasons for doing it. For both animals and plants.
Well, she's the only one that's recorded in the Silmarillion to make the plea for it.
Well, no, because you have Manwë creating the eagles.
Well, they don't mention specifically the creation of the eagles in the Silmarillion.
No.
Oh, yes, they do.
We're out of time. Shoot.
It's Yavanna that really goes after this idea of protection.
Wait, I want to hear what Sid has to say here.
Reread the discussion between Manwë and Yavanna. We know the ends came from Yavanna, but I also believe it clearly states that Manwë discovered a weird thing in his own mind that gave rise to both the great spirit eagles and also the eagles.
It was a discussion about where their areas were going to be, and she wanted them to be in the woods, and Manwë said, "Nope, they're going to be in the mountains, high, close to me."
Right, but that's when he knew he was creating them.
That's where he wanted them housed, but yes.
Yeah, you said when, I said where. We're both right.
Yeah. I mean,
okay, I have the actual what he said here. Oh, damn it! Give me 1 second here. I mean, we're run out of time anyway, so I might as well just... Here it is. Then Manwë spoke again, and he went down to Yavanna upon Azulahar, and he sat beside her beneath the two trees, and Manwë said, O Kamantari, Eru hath spoken, saying, Do then any of the Valar suppose that I did not hear all the song? even the least sound of the least voice. Behold, when the children awake, then the thought of Yavanna will also awake, and it will summon spirits from afar, and they will go among the Kelvar and the Olvar, and some will dwell within, and be held in reverence, and their just anger shall be feared for a time, while the firstborn are in their powers, and while the secondborn are young. But dost thou not now remember, Kementari, that thy thought sang not always alone? Did not thy thought and mine meet also, so that we took wing together like great birds and soar above the clouds? That also shall come to be by the heed of Iluvatar, and before the children awake, there shall go forth with wings like the wind the eagles of the lords of the west. So he's using the eagles as a metaphor, and it's actually Eru speaking. Manwë's just repeating his words.
We haven't got to the size thing. How much time do we have for me to cover the...
We're out of time. We're out of time. But you know what? Go ahead, talk about Bilbo running under Beorn's knees and all that stuff real quick.
Here's the conclusion for that for a couple
I can't not let you do it, I mean.
Well, yeah, it's figured out. Okay, so in the Lord of the Rings, it says that Bilbo, who is about 40 inches, we know he's about 40 inches as a hobbit, he is able to run under, or is the size of running under, between the knees of Beorn, who is wearing a tunic. Now, a tunic goes to the knees.
Just about to the knee, yeah.
About to the knees. So, since Beorn is in human form, and human form physiology is 25% of total height to the knee, that means if you expand the fact that he is 25% to the knee, standing and running between his legs, that Beorn is about 13 feet. In fact, he's 13 feet 4 inches tall, if that's anywhere near close. Now, he's about 13 feet tall in human form, using the square cube law, as a large man, not fat, but big and muscular. He would be about 1,850 pounds at 13 feet 4 inches. Now, when he turns into a bear at 13 feet, that's equivalent to the biggest bear in existence that we know of, which is 10 feet at 1,600 pounds. But the prehistoric animal that is about 5,000 to 8,000 years old is called Augustidens, which was a prehistoric bear at 12 to 14 feet, and it weighed between 2,200 and 4,500 pounds, 4,500 pounds being the largest male example that they've unearthed. This means that at 13, a 13-foot long bear, Tolkien describes as a great lord bear, and the descriptions of him swatting everybody aside goes hand in hand with this.
And squishing Bolg.
Squishing him, yeah. Is that my estimation on the calculation of the square cube law for a 13-foot long bear is about 3,600 pounds. This means he's over twice the weight of the two biggest Kodiak bears ever found. Now, when you drop a guy like that, or a bear like that, onto a battlefield with the kind of bite and claw pressure you're talking about, he is going to drive a swath through dozens and dozens and dozens of orcs and wargs, which is described by Tolkien.
Exactly what he did, yeah.
And that's what's cool about this, is that Tolkien says it happened, but now we have an idea of the size and weight of the beast that did this, which is consistent, and that's what I think is cool.
I want to hear one part of your math again at the very beginning. Bilbo was how many inches tall?
40 to 42.
Let's call him 40.
Sure.
And you said, is that one quarter or 1/5?
Foot to the knee is 25%, so it'd be 40 times 4, which is 160 inches.
And then dividing by 12 to make it feet.
So he's Balrog size.
13.
Yes, he is.
13.3 feet. Yeah.
He's Balrog,
which is interesting. Which is interesting in itself. It's also interesting, that idea of running between the knees, because as you pointed out before, Matt, an elf, or like 6 feet or more, could run between the knees of the Valar. He gave that same proportion.
Yes, he did.
Only down to hobbits for Beorn.
And when you're an elf,
yeah. Oh, but I think before we get to mass and weight and all that, I believe that part of Tolkien had a visual imagery of meaningful size, and the greatest unusual range would be from mortal or elf up to Beorn or the Vala.
And that's the cool part about Tolkien's vision, is when he's writing these things, you get to see his mind's eye. When elves are described as coming to the knees of the Valar, which is in the coming of the Old Noldor in chapter 3, 25% of height means that the Valar are somewhere between 28 and 30 feet, because the elves at that time were about 7.5 feet tall.
And
just imagine the visual of elves running under like Mandos's tunic, and hey, stop that.
Yeah, but now
it took you guys a second.
That was great. Let's go back to the Battle of Five Armies, because there's another piece here missing. So Beorn appears and turns into bear form. And remember a thing about the goblins, to use the term, used in one, they were easily terrified. And two, they were especially easily terrified if they were out in daylight. And wargs may have some extra intelligence, but they're essentially wolves.
Which are nocturnal.
And what scared small orc wouldn't run from a 4 times normal sized bear?
No, of course.
And what wolf of any size wouldn't run from even a grizzly?
Yeah.
Much less a Kodiak. So
there's very few animals that are going to square up to a bear. Maybe a crocodile. There's not many that are a hippo or something.
Exactly.
Bears are scary.
A hippo is about it. Yeah.
This is a great section.
Yeah.
But I agree with what you guys are saying. I mean,
keeping that idea of fear in mind.
Yeah.
I could actually do a whole segment on the power of fear used by good beings.
Yep, I agree with that.
Including Gandalf and Aragorn.
Last thought on the Battle of Five Armies, though, because it came up in the chat and Laurel was mentioning it. The Battle of Five Armies did start during the day, but the goblins used a swarm of bats to blot out the sun so that they could travel. But Beorn only shows up later when it actually is nighttime. He doesn't show up right away. So that, like I said, I think the closest that we ever get to, maybe he was a bear during the daytime. We don't really know what time of day it was when they were walking to Mirkwood and they kind of saw him off in the distance. I think it might have been around twilight.
He comes at the same time as the eagles come.
It's at the end. The battle had been going for many hours at that time.
But the eagles don't come at night.
The eagles come whenever they want to.
Well,
let's be real here.
The eagles come whenever Manwë tells them to.
I mean,
I think the section really was interesting about the fingerprints of Varda and especially Yavanna all over this. But I just wanted the audience to see not only that aspect of him, but also his size of what Tolkien is talking about, because it's just a really cool character.
To reply to Tepu, by the way, who said the world record of height is 8 foot 11 inches, and the guy only weighed 200 kilograms. I know who you're talking about. That guy wasn't like a big, muscular, strongman type like Beorn would have been.
Yeah, no, exactly right.
Yeah,
they portrayed him pretty well in the movie. The actor who did that, he would have been taller. Actually, they portrayed him at about 9 feet.
I thought he was a little small.
Yeah, he was small. Yeah. He by all. I mean, the citations I just cited right here are clear. He was at least 13 feet tall. He was huge.
Yeah. In terms of physical type, the actor who played Andre the Giant in Princess Bride.
That was Andre the Giant.
It was, yeah, Andre the Giant, who played in the Princess Bride.
Yeah.
The Princess Bride is a really good.
That would have been the physique I would imagine.
We're talking about. Yeah. He's the one that Jackson would have added 2/3 more height to get Beorn in human form. But a final note here. I love what we did tonight. we never had to agree.
No.
And we came up with two completely valid theories, either one of which could work. And I just want to invite everyone who's listening, if you're going to do subcreation, as Tolkien called it, possibilities of suggestion, fan fiction, whatever form, do it like this. Make it feel right to you and good to you and in harmony with Tolkien's qualities of upliftment by divine beings and eucatastrophe. And then you're doing what Tolkien hopes that we will all do.
You really brought it full circle there, didn't you? Going back to the first segment and the theories that we like and the theories that we don't like, right? I guess we've given...
We're doing all this again, plug for next month. And
yes, let's talk
again next month with one topic. Let's keep the topic secret.
Oh, I'm not going to tell the topic, but I'm going to say that we are going to have a very special episode. I know, a very special episode like sitcoms in the 90s. Next month, July, where instead of having half-hour segments where we each bring something to the table... This is something, and it was actually Sid's idea, that we're going to all discuss for the entirety of the show. And this is something that I want us to revisit, the idea of doing special episodes like that every 6 months or so. We're going to do another one in December that's sort of my idea. And then sort of like next year, Matt, I'm probably going to ask you, hey, do you have something that can be a special episode for next summer?
I do have an idea to announce right now, and that is going to be where we do Beorn and Luthien as a play with each one of us three assigned to different parts of the play.
I love it. Okay. I love it.
Yes, except I do want a female for the female voices.
Well, maybe Laurel would.
I'm nominating Laurel and Mariel right now. You have been our greatest supporter and our inspiration.
She can,
Would you be interested sometime, if you're still there, Laurel, sometime next summer of joining us for a special? I'll have to make a new layout for that, but joining us for like a performance of Beorn and Luthien.
Yeah,
or the version of it that Matt is writing.
It's you can see it. It's at Lore Master right now. It's on the website too. At the website lore-master.com. But it's really built for her because she could be Luthien, she could be Melian. There's some great female parts in there that'll be perfect for her, and she knows the content, so it'd be great.
Did you post that in the Nolwa at all? I think you should post it there for easy access.
I did not post it in Norway.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation. That's what you made that space for, right?
Yeah, I could.
Yeah. I think for easy access, you should post it to the Norway.
I'll post it there, sure.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you everybody for coming by, and for all of you who have been subscribers and members and all that stuff throughout this journey. I will tell you guys a funny story, and Sid and Matt haven't heard this. Yesterday, when I was working on editing episode 112 of Question and Answer, Laurel just said, "Tell me when and where." It'll be next year or so. We'll certainly talk to you closer to then. But yes. It would be somewhere around next summer. What was I saying? Oh, my nephew was over here. I was editing together episode 112 of Tolkien Scholar Answers Questions, and my nephew rode his bike over here. My nephew Nathan, and he came in here and he was admiring the green screen and he was looking at my editing software and everything, and then he wanted to see how the YouTube channel was doing and he wanted to look at the analytics because kids are interested in this sort of thing. And he says, "You've got 2.35K views." And I said, "No, Nate, that's subscribers." And so I hadn't known how many views the channel has gotten as a whole because that's not a number I look at. I look at individual videos. But I wanted to let you guys know, as a channel, we have surpassed 250,000 views. So I showed him that and his little eyes bugged out, because kids, they love to hear about big numbers like that. And he was impressed when he thought it was, 2,500.
Subscription rate at this point?
Subscriptions, we were at 2,300 plus.
Oh, wow.
That is more views than Sauron had men and orcs in his armies.
That's true. Now let's see if we can get it to more than Morgoth had.
What a captive audience.
But if you guys are watching and you haven't subscribed, I do ask you to subscribe at this point. I mean, you listen to us yak about this kind of stuff, linguistics and philosophy and practical concerns like measuring and square cube lore and stuff like that.
And magic.
And magic, absolutely, the magic of all three, really, and because that's sort of our specialties, right? And we that's not saying that I can't talk about measurements or that Sid can't talk about linguistics. It's just we tend to gravitate towards different things. But like I said, consider it, and if you'd like to be a member, consider that. It really helps me out. You get to see all the videos really early. And it really helps me out. So anyway, guys, we're going to end the stream here. Let's come on over to my ending screen, which is here. Until next time, we sail off from Mythland, the grey havens at Lindon, west of the Shire, towards the Undying Lands. And we bid you all farewell. For those of you who want to know the streaming schedule, it's going to be the next 2 Thursdays. We are going to have streams. I will be starting my analytical reading of The Two Towers next Thursday, the 12th at 7:30 p.m. in 2 weeks. From then, we're going to return to playing more of the Hobbit game. So that, that'll be really cool. And then the next meeting of the Council of Tolkien will be the 3rd of July, which means that towards the end of it we might hear explosions, but that's normal. Especially in my neck of the woods where the 4th of July seems to be a week-long celebration of explosions and making dogs scared. But anyway, and for those of you joining for gaming streams on Twitch, I'll just go over the next couple of days. Let's see. So today's Thursday. So tomorrow we should probably finish up Final Fantasy IV. We'll see how that goes. Saturday we have Xenoblade, and Sunday we have Bloodstained. Exciting, exciting. They just announced a new Bloodstained game just as I'm playing the previous one. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
See you later.